Okay, this is feedback for shadowsk. The original message said, I work for a comic called M9 Girls. We make a page weekly, and I've never been happy with the quality of the page, particularly colors and shading. What tips can you give me to get a better end result without sacrificing too much time because of my deadline? So these are the pages that you showed me. So it's in full color. Usually, when in the storytelling, lighting and atmosphere is some of the most important things that I think about. It's something that's not really uh, clear in examples of manga and webtoons and in printed comics. So, originally in printed comics and manga, we think a lot about production and efficiency. And before digital art, is also really difficult to create mood and atmosphere without it really adding a lot of time sink into the process. So in manga and comics, you generally don't see stuff like atmospheric lighting. You see a lot of inks, heavy black inks to define shapes and make the comic easy to read and also print well. And then lots of flat colors, right? And even then, in the flat colors, due to the black ink being there, you can't really do much. With the lighting, since lighting and atmosphere really requires you to control the values, the shades of the values, the darkest and lightest value bounds, and all of that impacts how a page looks or an image looks. So you fast forward to digital art. Now in Photoshop or in any other program that you use, you're gonna have a lot of things like these layer modes. So an example would be like linear dodge, making things brighter, giving a warm or cool or just radiant glow without you really understanding why it glows that way or why it looks good glowing that way. You have stuff like lighten that allows you to really limit how dark the darkest shadows are and give it sort of like a warm, muted kind of feel. All these kind of things that are very hard to do and not very worth it to do in the past. And these are the things that really helps convey mood and atmosphere. If you look at photography, if you Google like aesthetic photography on Pinterest or Tumblr or something, you're gonna see all these kinds of effects of like overlay of layer effects onto the photo to give it that aesthetic and atmosphere. So in what I do is I try to focus a lot more on that aspect, so the atmosphere environment, rather than fine details. You want to do a really good job. If you do a really good job in the flat colors, in the lighting and atmosphere and color choices that you make, color balance, you would go a lot farther than, say, if you paint something really well. So in your example, I see that your pages are generally very room light. So there's no, like, the white is white and the black is black, right? Red is red. It's not like, say, a nighttime piece of art or photo where the green grass is now navy blue due to the fact that it's night, or in an afternoon setting, the gray concrete of a building is now orange. So that kind of relative lighting is super helpful in conveying mood and atmosphere, and it's not present here in your page, understandably, because they're taken indoors. But even then, if you look at, say, if you take a screenshot of Arcane and look at and just eye drop the colors here, I'll actually do it. Arcane screenshot. So if you look at these two different screenshots of Jinx, you might think that, I think most people would think that, wow, it looks really good because it's painted and has a lot of detail in the believability of it. But I think it's important to realize that even if you remove all of the details, the fine-tuned shading, what makes this stand out is the hue, the relative color choice. So the warm ambience here makes her skin this dark orange, even though it looks to you like skin tone. And the gloomy, kind of sick-ish atmosphere here makes her skin tone green. Like you literally use green to paint the skin, even though in relation to its environment, right, her skin is obviously not green. You can tell that it's skin tone. So learning how to control colors, learning color theory to know how to create this kind of effects, to figure out how to do relative colors for your flats would really go a long way. So in your case, in this page, the scene that you've drawn, it is daylight outside, it is room lights inside, but also like you already made the color of the shadow of the white coats bluish. So you understand that this does not need to be gray, right? It can be tinted due to its surroundings and you think blue looks good, so you put blue on it. Same thing on the bluish tone of the shadow that you put on basically everything I see. Like you put a multiply layer and you use a blue tone to add shadows to it. That's what you did because the environment is blue. But you just have to go a step further and realize that that light also applies to the base color, and you can make the tone and the ambience different by skewing your hue towards a specific tone. So I don't know if I can do this well here. I'll try my best to make some immediate adjustments. So let's say I want to make this scene really blue ish. So I make his skin tone a little bit more purple lavender, because that's skin color plus blue makes it look kind of more like magenta. Same thing with, say, this white here. I'll probably make it not totally blue, but like, blue tint. I'll make it more saturated so that I can actually include colors here, or rather make the gray blue. And then pants, same thing, probably more on the magenta side, less saturated. It's a little bit too dark now, so maybe I wouldn't do that to the whites, but everything else, right? You tint it towards a certain way, and you create a different ambience. So this makes everything darker, but also because it's darker, you can now make it brighter by, say, adjusting the contrast. So the whole panel feels more, say, techy. It reflects their interior better. Another thing that you can do is the lighting itself. So where it comes from, which parts of the characters shine and which parts are in shadows. So what you have right now, when you added lights and shadows, you're using it to define features. You are doing detail. You're not using shadows to show form. You're not using shadows to show light source. That is another big thing that is really helpful. So here, again, light is used to show form a little bit. Here, definitely it's used to show form. So the light falls on top to the bottom, it falls on Jinx, and the edges that you see, this line here defines how her muscles are defined. It shows which part is facing the top, which part is facing the bottom. It shows Jinx really well. And the part that shows it well is not the detail, but like just the fact that this block right here is separated from the other blocks here. So it's not fine painting or anything. It's you knowing how the body form works, you knowing where the light comes from and how it falls onto the body, and how you can change the direction of the light source to really accent the parts of the body that you want accented. Here they want you to see her silhouette and then her hiding in the shadow, or her being in the shadow. of all that lighting, like it's not a very uplifting and flattering light. The same pose, right? Even though she's slouched and stuff, you can make her look very ethereal by, say, putting this light source down here, and the light source will illuminate her face. It will make her glow all around the side edges here. I can try to draw it out like something like this. Right, it's a totally different vibe. Suddenly it looks like she found something meaningful, found something hopeful, and she's looking forward to it. So light source, understanding where the light comes from, where you want the light to come from, in order to flatter your image, flatter your figures, and also to make people look at the right things, right? So in here, there's only one figure, but here you have several people talking to each other. What is most important? Who's talking, and who's you want the viewers to look at. So here, the people that are talking are these guys, but you want people to look at her, right? So in this case, lighting could be construed as like you can create some sort of mystery or uncertainty or intimidation by, say, putting these guys in shadows, like so. Oh, okay. Oops. Multiply like this. I'm gonna do this a little. Right, and I purposely left this part out to show that maybe it's a light that kind of clips through the top of the ceiling somewhere, and so it only lands on part of them. And then same thing. Now that the same light that only shines through to the bottom half of the screen also would apply to the background, right? So now you not only have this a little bit more sense of mystery or heaviness to it, but also the people that are shadows and you don't want to take away attention from the main figure. They are out of the way and frames the illuminated figure in the middle very well. So it serves two effects. It creates atmosphere and it creates focus. And that's something that this kind of shadow is what you want to do with shadows and highlights in general. If you want to save time with drawing comics, you don't want to use your shadows to define shapes. You can consider this as painting. It's too small. It shows fine detail. It doesn't show you big form. You want to use your shadows to show structure, whether it's structure of the body or structure of the environment around them. You want the shadows to give some sort of feeling, and it's hard to explain all the different angles and how they look. You just have to like look at, I don't know, check out movies and just pause them at times where it's focused on several people just one-on-one talking to each other, and where environment lighting becomes very important, and just pay attention to how people use lighting to convey different moods, and really learn how you can figure that out yourself. So yeah, I think Arcane is a really good way to do it because it is an animated movie. It's not film. It's not real life film, so it's easier to understand and dissect. But in general, like any film would do, you just have to really think about whatever you see, where did the light come from? Even if they're standing in pitch black, if you can see them, there is a light somewhere. Why did they put it there? What did they want to illuminate? How does this help you see how does this help them make you see what they want you to see? Most of this kind of shadow usually is just like big blocks. So it takes very little time, but it shows a lot of information and creates a lot of atmosphere. So that's another thing. I want to show my comic or my AU as an example, as a combination of all the things that I talked about. So here is one comic strip. I used a few different moods in here in one strip. I paint, but that's just my preference. I like to paint. So you don't have to paint. I took it off to show that it's unnecessary. So all of this painting, all of this detailing that I do, completely unnecessary. I just do it because I like it. What's the only thing that's needed is this base. The flats, which if I drop, you can tell that even this slightly tinted, even this like black and white is slightly tinted. It's brown. And the red is not just red, it's a little bit more magenta because I like magenta. And this is in the afternoon lighting, and then here same thing. But then when I want to show them in a more rainy, gloomy lighting, even if in this flats, the white is white. Wow. All of this is a little bit more yellowish, and then very obviously down here, like here, this is not white anymore. This is darker. I guess this is still pretty neutral looking, but sometimes I would put like a lot more bluish or more desaturated colors, right? And then here, same thing. The light is not as bright or direct anymore. You can see her in a little bit of a shadow to reflect the gloom of her mood, changing based on what she sees, right? So from the flats itself, I already try to do these things. And then when I add the lighting and shadow, notice how the shadows, when I use these shadows, I use them to paint. So I don't draw details in the shadows. Like when I paint, you can see that this is where I put in folds, but in the base shadows, when I use it to convey lighting, look at how I didn't shade. I didn't shade along these clothing lines. I love drawing fabric, but I'm not going to use shadows to draw these. I use shadows to draw these big blocks to show the form of her body, to show that the light is coming from the window outside over here, back out here, and it shines on top of them and cuts across their body because like she's leaning a little forwards. Her own body's gonna block some of the light from reaching the bottom part of her body, which shows that the light is from the outside is very strong, such that the light inside is not enough to illuminate this part. And because the light outside is very strong and very warm, it just feels like a nice day out. The sun is out, even though you can't see the sun. It's a warm kind of sunlight, not like bright noon, blue sky kind of intense sunlight. It's a warm, maybe afternoon or a little bit hazy, a tiny little bit hazy kind of light. And then it's so direct that it blocks out of the interior light. And the same thing down here, because I want them to feel more intimate, more close together. They're whispering to each other or talking directly to each other. Instead of shining the light directly on them sideways, normally, like if I took this off and I told you to paint it, you probably would paint this part dark. You probably would paint in the edges of her jaw, paint in the underside of her hair. But no, I want the light to be behind them. I want them to look like, you know how when you lean into someone else and you talk to them, you kind of feel like you are blocking out the outside world, right? And light is the outside world. So I decided to put the light on a top-down kind of way, so that it only reaches the top of their head, so that at least I can put some lights into the painting. And then the top side of their heads kind of blocks out the light from the rest of them. And it feels kind of close. Like just lighting itself makes this conversation closer than these conversations, right? This is the lighting where I want to show environment. This is the lighting where I want to show personal interaction. And then Yeah, same thing here. This light is similar to this, and I chose this angle not only because it's contiguous with the lighting that I've set before, but also I can put all of them into shadow. Like this girl, I don't want people to look at her. I want people to know that she's there, but she's not the important part of this interaction. I want people to look at these two. So I am able to put both of them, put her entire body in shadow, and I'm able to put her face in the light, and then you know that she's walking into the shadow, so she's walking away, she's exiting the scene. That's what the shadow conveys. And then these two in the panels down here, they're in shadows, they walk away, right? So even the lighting itself, when I think about lighting, I think about those things. And you can do a lot. You can do so much with just blocking these out in the right way, thinking about how to use light to convey form, how to use light to show time of day, show atmosphere, how to use light to guide eyes, to cut out things, block out things that you don't want people to look at too much, and to frame things that you want people to pay attention to. And all of this is very time saving because it's just flats. So when you do your lighting for highlights and shadows, try to think about that more and less so about like this kind of detail. Think about what purpose your shadow serves. It will feel really awkward to think about at first because it's not really something that people actively can answer, right? When we draw, most of the time when we try to put down brush strokes, we are thinking, does this look good? No, undo. Does this look good? No, undo. I'm gonna put this here because I think there could be a shadow here. Does it work out? Yeah, kinda. I'm gonna keep doing this. But like to have to think about, what does this serve? What purpose does this serve? Sometimes it would feel like you're being too pretentious trying to overanalyze stuff. But really, it's just a way of thinking that you can train yourself into being able to do. You don't have to do it all the time, but once you get used to having to think about like, what purpose does this serve, you will first of all realize that you don't know the answer to a lot of these things. You don't really know the purpose of like putting this guy here or putting this guy here or choosing the camera angle that you choose to show this girl in the middle. What other camera angle could you have used? How could you make this more diverse, right? In terms of camera angles. So try to think more about the purpose of your choices in lighting and colors and stuff. Look up color theory. Try to understand at least how I think complementary colors work. Try to think about what different kinds of shadows are, how lighting work. Photography tips are very useful. Cinematic lighting tips are very useful, even if they have nothing to do with drawing. It will really help you understand where lights come from, make you think about things a different way, and really help you figure out some of those answers that might be hard to come up with. You specified colors and shading, but I guess I think you can also think more about camera angles. That's one thing that I just mentioned right now that I reminded myself of. Camera angles is really helpful in storytelling and the flow of the story. So you can see that I use pretty standard camera angles for when they're talking to each other. But when I zoom out a little bit, right, when I make you look at them and look at what's around them, I put the camera somewhere else. I point them at an angle to include things that I want to include without creating too much empty space. So in here, I wanted to give a sense of the space that they're in. So that's why I put the camera farther away and I pointed it at an angle so that they can see the wall, the floor, the lamp on the ceiling the machines and stuff. And then same thing here. I could have made this like you use a lot of parallel lines, like vertical, horizontal, and vertical lines. Everything is, camera pointing straight forward. What this misses is, right, the last axis. You have a horizontal and vertical, and an axis that, unfortunately, because this is a video, I can't point, but like the axis that's going directly, like if you stab her in the chest with a sword, that's the axis that you can't see. It's visible here because the camera is at an angle, but here you don't see that third axis, and so you can't tell distance. You can't show much in terms of where they are, what the room is like, what the spacing is like. Same thing here, very vertical, horizontal, done deal. If you add this third dimension, it might be hard or at first for you to figure out how to draw everything in perspective, but being able to put that work into making your camera help you tell the story will actually save you a lot of time in coloring, because subconsciously when we color and add detail, we're trying to make up for the lack of detail somewhere on the drawing, and that detail can be missing in other forms than color. Like you're trying really hard to color it so that it conveys information when the information that's missing is not color, it's space. So if you can draw this, like you can draw space well, you don't even need to paint anything. Let me try to take away some of the detail painting here. Can I? Or did I put it? Oh, I think I painted onto the layer, so I can't take it off. Like, okay, let me do this. Let me just do this. I'll just 100% fill this in. 100% fill this in. Like there's enough sense of space that even when everything is flat, it still conveys enough information, right? I still take lighting into account to choose different colors for different facets of these boxes and buildings. Where the shadows are, what color shadows they have to be, how strong the contrast is, etc. Those are still important. It takes a lot of thinking to think about those things. It might not save you time in the beginning, but over time, when you practice and get used to making sure that you're conveying the necessary information and nothing more, being able to use your camera well would make it so that you don't feel like painting anymore. Like you might not even think that you need to add these kinds of shadows anymore. Like this shadow is making up for the fact. I put this shadow here to make up for, subconsciously, to make up for the fact that I can't see this third dimension. So this line, this shadow line, and then in the background, and then this shadow line in the foreground, their discrepancy is what I am using to convey space. And if you chose a different angle that shows the space, I wouldn't even feel like I need to do this in the first place. So ideally, theoretically, this is what I think. If you draw a comic really well, you don't need to color it. Like you don't even need to add shading or add flats into it. At most, you add flats into it and everything is done. You don't need to add anything else. And if, from my experience, I recorded every single AU strip I've done. The first 50% of the recording is draft, sketch, line art, flats. And then the other 50% is the painting. So the coloring takes a long time. And if you can convey enough information, color is not really necessary. Shading is not necessary. You don't want to spend a lot of time trying to make up for things in the wrong way. So try to think about camera work as well. Look up some, again, cinematography, very helpful. Look up some guides on camera angles. Don't limit yourself to comic guides or art guides. Look at photography or film or video those kinds of guys, because they have to capture something real, they think a lot from the point of view of like tools, right? Their equipment, where did they put it, where did they put the camera, where did they put the lighting, where did they put the bounce light, where did they add fog, that kind of thing. When you think about where all those things are from, it makes it a lot easier for you to figure out how to create your own scenes with those tools in comics. So check those out as well, on top of like thinking about the color things that I just mentioned. I think I looked up some other comic. Yes, okay. Lastly, I'll show my favorite comic. It's called Their Story. And this person does all the things that I like. So notice how very atmospheric colors, very simple colors. They barely painted anything. This, like, even if they took it out, it wouldn't matter. This little block of shadow here, just all flats. You can already tell what time of day it is. You can already feel that it's very real. Not only because the background is very real, but like, come on, the car is also flat color. They use camera angle to show space. They use gradients to show light, and then everything else just flat. They use colors to convey the time of day and atmosphere. Very efficient. Oh, I went to the wrong page here. And then again, very daylight, interior lighting, nothing special at all. They added some shadow, again, not necessary, but you notice that, again, using shadows to show she's outside, she's illuminated, she's inside, she's not, she's in shadows. She's inside, she's illuminated, she's outside, she's in shadows. So distance, right? Tells a story without needing to paint anything. What else? Here again as well, lots of flats, but the lighting, the color choices conveys everything. Flats. They also have they add a lot of little shadings here and there, but not necessary. Like here, lighting used not to draw the folds, but to convey light source. So the shoulder here is illuminated, the rest of him is not. A little bit of clothing folds, but most of the time, the lighting and shadow is used to convey form. So top down lighting, top part of her is illuminated, bottom half is not. Daytime lighting, nighttime lighting. Get rid of the shadows, same feel. Her entire jacket is just a blur of dark. Her hair is not shaded. There's some special effects on the necklace, but if you block it out, minimal shading, you can take away all the shading, it will still be atmospheric. So these are the kind of things that you can think about, and hopefully it'll help you a lot. It's used a lot in most really well done comics that are updated in a very fast manner. They all draw like this, and they all think about things the same way. So I hope this was helpful to you. I know I didn't provide any like actual links to stuff. I don't really have access to those resources myself. I figured most of these things out over too long of a time. I don't remember where I got them from. But yeah, it's a lot of initial investment in learning things correctly, but over time it should help you save a lot of time.